We're talking World Junior performances. How did Will Smith save his best for last? Did Hävelid stock go up after World Juniors? And talking Celebrini and what Cutter Gauthier coming to the division means for the Sharks. All that with the NHL prospect boys, Hadi and Sebastian. So all that and more on today's episode.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite tanking team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Probably a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, even if they're in the midst of an 11-game losing streak. We still got you covered. Today, I'm joined with the NHL prospect guys, Sebastian and Hadi. We're going to talk about the Sharks' performances at the World Juniors. And then, of course, we're going to talk about future Shark, fingers crossed, Macklin Celebrini, and what the Cutter Gauthier trade to Anaheim does for the Sharks and why they need to get Celebrini. So, boys, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it worked out with the Cutter Gauthier trade today. I kind of slid in the DMs to see if you guys would want to come on and talk about the Sharks prospects, because it's the only fun and interesting thing about San Jose, but kind of worked out with the Cutter Gauthier stuff. So before we get into Will Smith, if he is going to be leading the way with him and potentially Macklin Celebrini, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you guys by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So let's start. I think we have to start with Will Smith, right? The Sharks' fourth overall pick. Slow start to the tournament, but by the gold medal game, Will Smith was playing some of his best hockey. So, Hadi, I will start with you. Will Smith, can people calm down a little bit after maybe the slow start to the tournament?
Well, I mean, with Will Smith, we're talking about a player who was placed in a situation where he was placed on the third line that has stayed together the whole time. That chemistry was already there. And I think Team USA did a fantastic job with making sure they iced lines that work well together. But, you look at the guys in front of him, obviously Cutter Gauthier, Jimmy Snuggerud, Oliver Moore, Frank Nazar, Gavin Brindley. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, it was normal for him to start off on that line. What surprised me though was that Ryan Leonard was the driving force on that line, not Smith. Leonard was regularly the driver of play, going both ends. And Will Smith overall, I mean, he had a good end to the tournament, and that's really what matters is he steps up in the right moments. And we saw that this tournament, really, I mean, he used his playmaking extremely well. The defensive game's never going to be a strength, but you saw some flashes there. Some promising stuff overall from Will Smith. I wouldn't force San Jose Sharks fans to calm down at a time like this. It's definitely the time to stay excited about these prospects. Will Smith is going to be a stud, that's for sure.
No, I mean, a lot of Sharks fans were very like, oh my God, he's a bust already after like the beginning of the tournament. And it's like, guys, it's 4-game sample size. Like, let's calm down. And like the Ryan Leonard thing, like if you've watched a lot of Boston College this year, and Ryan Leonard has been like that since day one with Boston College, right? He kind of is that guy. And I think his game is a lot more subtle, right? Where it's like, he's not going to be like the guy crashing the net as much, but he's going to make the smart plays. And the guy can put the puck like through the eye of a needle wherever he wants to on the ice. Sebastian, what do you think about Smith's tournament?
I thought he was pretty good overall. Like I saw Will Smith playing Will Smith hockey in this tournament, very much along the lines of what he often does. And while the production wasn't the highest, again, he was playing third line minutes. Like the States had a true luxury at this tournament where they were able to ice the best line junior hockey has seen in the last 3 to 5 years as their third line. Like that is an insane, like absolutely insane that they were able to do that. The skill on this roster was just so overwhelming. But yeah, like there's nothing to worry about with Will Smith. He he's not as refined as Ryan Leonard is right now. I think there's a reason that Ryan Leonard excelled more blatantly against World Junior competitions as a 19 or 18, 19-year-old than Will Smith did, because his game is geared for tournaments like these and for like playing against like higher levels of competition. But Will Smith is still the offensive driver of that line. He's the one creating chances. Like looking back, like even in the gold medal game, like of course he played his best hockey in that game, and the slap pass he had for that first goal to Jacob to Perreault was just like disgustingly good. And Gabe Perreault was excellent in this tournament too. I thought that you really saw all three players of last year's NTDP line like continue to just be elite on that line, like and developing kind of fast-tracked development, like in terms of development, because they are still playing with each other. And like Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard have taken real big steps since last year. And while Will Smith is maybe playing more similar hockey this year to last year compared to the other two players on his line, he was the one that didn't really need to evolve as much because his NHL projection is still that of a slam dunk, like dynamic top six player. And whether that is a second line center or first line center, we'll see. But if you add Macklin Celebrini to the fold, everything just falls into place wonderfully, and you're kind of just set.
We'll talk Celebrini here in a little bit. So another guy from this draft that played, Kasper Halttunen, who's had a interesting kind of start with London. He's been scoring a bunch, but it's been very, very power play dependent. What did you think of his tournament? I'll start, Sebastian, I'll start with you. What did you think of Kasper Halttunen's tournament?
I like this tournament. I quite like Kasper Halttunen. I thought last year he was one of the more intriguing like power forward sniper like mold of players at the draft. He he was driving an insane amount of expected goals at the Liga level, despite not scoring a single goal last year. He had like 4 individual expected goals with 0 actual goals, and he was driving like 50% of the expected goals of his team when he was on the ice, just coming off of his shots, not even including like passes, because he doesn't pass the puck. It doesn't really matter. But
passing's stupid. Just shoot.
Exactly, and he's really good at shooting, which he showed in this tournament.
Shooting the puck.
He's really, really good at shooting. He's incredibly powerful, lethal release. He still has to kind of learn to layer his other strengths together to form a more cohesive overall toolkit. Like he's really big and physical, but he hasn't really learned how to create advantages through that just yet. So there's definitely still a lot of learning to do there. I'd give him another like 3 years before he has any impact at the NHL level. Like maybe he's a bottom like 4th line guy that you kind of put out for 9 minutes a night before then. But in terms of like actual impact, I'd still give him like 3 years because he's still quite raw. But there's definitely upside there as like a middle six, like pure scorer, a real luxury to have on a second power play, somebody that can shoot the puck like he can, like think like Mike Hoffman, but like not the last couple of years, like our
Mike Hoffman we're enjoying right now.
Yeah, yes. like the three of us are very familiar with Mike Hoffman past his prime. I'm thinking more like tail end of prime, maybe, right? But he's an interesting player, and I quite liked him in this tournament. I think he's progressing steadily, but still a bit of a long shot in terms of just how impactful he could be long term. But Hadi, do you like him more or less than I do? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on a fence with him. On one end, I mean, there's a Lil Jon song named after his play style. It's just shots, just all the time. But at the same time, you've got this type of ability to drive the net and also delay with the puck. That's really interesting for a big guy. He's comfortable holding on to pucks. He's comfortable playing them up the boards to his defenseman and kind of cycling up to assist them. So it's just he works really, really well as a half wall option. And I think that with Halttunen, the best course is to keep him in a top 6 role no matter what. So, you know, if he has to play junior for a couple more years, that's fine. Once he's done with his stint in juniors, if he has to play AHL until he's ready for a top 6 role, that is also fine. I just feel like you put Halttunen next to a pure playmaker, a guy like William Eklund or God forbid Macklin Celebrini, it's going to be money. But overall, I mean, you're looking at you're looking at a player who will consistently score you goals if he's developed the right way and allowed to explore his game in the top 6 role consistently, and not just be your trigger man on the half wall, but actually play quality minutes at 5-on-5. I think that's really, really important with Halttunen, because he's got a bomb of a shot and he can use it really, really well. I just want to see some more stuff heading into the offensive zone that helps him get those shots as regularly as possible from quality areas.
Yeah, I mean, that's watching, London games. And it seems like for them, he's very much like he's playing third line minutes, but they're kind of saving him for the power play because his shot is so lethal in that London team. It does have some nice players in front of him right now. So the hope is like as he kind of continues to progress his OHL career that he earns those minutes. You start to kind of see that development continue because, yeah, his shot right now is like pretty close to NHL caliber just because of how I think it's lethal. I mean, just any shot from him, we're just sitting from the faceoff circle. It's probably going in because, it's pretty lethal. And the guy loves to shoot. So we'll talk about some guys who are probably going to be getting ready to make an impact here sooner that were on Team Sweden. And we'll talk about Jake Furlong, noted defenseman, Hadi, Jake Furlong, here in just 1 second. With the NFL regular season coming to a close, that doesn't mean that you still can't get on the action with the playoffs here. You can do that with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use, and you can bet in so many different ways, whether it's live same-game parlays, so if a guy starts to go off and you want to kind of cash in on that, you can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub and see what the most popular parlays are going on. So if you think you want to jump in with everyone, or if you think everyone's an idiot and you want to fade them, you can do that as well. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so let's talk about the hometown Swedes who lost, one silver, lost to the Americans. And we'll start with Filip, the Sharks' first round pick from a couple seasons ago. I think he had a better kind of beginning to the end of his tournament. And, I think especially in that gold medal game was very, very quiet. He's probably coming to the AHL after this season. Last year at this time, we were talking about, Bystedt kind of made that big step. This year, kind of a little bit quieter, kind of coming out of the World Juniors. Cause for concern, Hadi?
Not too much. I think there's still some ways to go in his game. There's things to develop. He's a fairly linear player. He goes to areas and plants his big butt there and does what he does. I mean, he's a classic big guy in that sense. But I want to see a bit more lateral play from him. I want to see a bit more taking pucks to the middle more consistently. He's the type of player who's going to drive down the boards, but once he's there, he doesn't have that instinct to cut across pressure inside or, spin up and make a pass to the defenseman and kind of help him out like we were talking with Kasper Halttunen. But overall, the shot is really good. The playmaking ability when he sees those lanes is really, really good. I just think that overall with Bystedt, the physical element of his game is developed. Is the mental elements that need tweaking, and that will come with time. I would be very, very surprised. Like I said, when Bystedt sees a lane, he hits it intelligently, he hits it quickly, and hits it accurately. But the issue is he's not seeing those lanes yet because he hasn't developed the right habits to open up the right lanes yet. He's more kind of relying on lanes happening rather than creating them himself. So that little tweak in that element of his game, learning to delay with the puck, learning to stop up along the boards, cut inside, cut across pressure. That's going to make a big difference in Bystedt's game because anything he sees, he executes really well.
It'll be interesting going from the large ice when he does come over to the NHL because it's going to be like that processing needs to be quicker, right, on the smaller ice because lanes you had in the SHL, they're going to be much more smaller and compact or disappear quicker. So don't expect Bystedt to kind of just jump in and all of a sudden be an impact player, right? Right, Sebastian?
Yeah, like I think I'm a bit more skeptical with Bystedt than Hadi is. I've been a bit of a skeptic on his front going back to the draft. Like I thought it was a real reach on draft day for the Sharks. I thought that there was a lot of value on the board that they could have gotten and squeezed out of that like 11th overall pick trade. But like Mattias Hävelid was a great get there. But with Bystedt, like I think building off of what Hadi was saying, it's been like his habits and processing speed that I think I've always been like having a lot of questions about and left wanting a little bit. And last year in the SHL, there were flashes where he was surrounded by line mates that really made those adaptations a lot easier for him. And I haven't seen him get the same type of support this year. So we've seen his play drop off as a result. But yeah, I think he's a player that still needs a solid 2.5 to 3 years. So it's a bit of a longer timeline. He's more of a project. I think the raw upside there is still quite nice. I think it's like a solid second liner, but the likelihood of that I still think is maybe like a 30%. Like I'm not convinced that he's going to be like a shoe-in for an impactful role in San Jose, especially with the other like prospects that you have coming through the pipeline. I'm a lot more enthusiastic about players like Daniil Gushchin, for instance, in that pipeline than I am with like someone like Filip Bystedt. But he's still just like 19 years old, still a lot of development ahead of him. So I'd be happy to be proven wrong on his front. But yeah, I think I have even more questions about his projection now than I did on draft day. So we'll see with him.
I think he's got like a souped up 3C is kind of where he probably ends up. So one guy you mentioned, Mattias Hävelid, who I think his stock after this tournament, on that Swedish defense blue line, we had Sharks fans, we have to be feeling pretty good about Hävelid's development, where he's coming along, right? Both of you guys are just smiling and shaking your head. So whoever
we love Hävelid. Oh yeah.
So go at it, Hävelid. Sharks, we got it. Especially, I mean, we have Mukama Doolan on the blue line, who's progressing really well in the AHL, but there's a lot of question marks along the blue line for these Sharks prospect pool. Could Hävelid be a guy that we're in a couple of years talking about? Wow, the Sharks might have found something.
I mean, Hadi earlier today during our own recording for an episode that's going out on Wednesday, we were talking about Hävelid, and Hadi was talking about him as a theoretical contender to Zane Parekh if Zane Parekh were the draft choice for San Jose on the right side for like the top spot on that blue line. So I think Hadi's even more enthusiastic about Mattias Hävelid than I am, and I'm a pretty big fan. But like, take it away. Like, why are you like that high on Hävelid?
Well, it's the overall game. I really kind of pegged Hävelid as this kind of this bona fide offensive defenseman who lacked in defensive efficiency, and overall, like since last year, he's proven me wrong on that. The defensive game has come a long way. He's really comfortable under pressure, especially multivariable scenarios. He can have a player on his back and a player forechecking on him, and he'll still be able to make the right play. Overall, his ability to mirror footwork off the rush, the defensive game in zone, his ability to clear the net front, to get involved in cycles at the right time. His timing on cycles is extremely good as well. There's so many different areas of his defensive game that are polished that, the argument was less a lauding of Hävelid and more of a knock on Parex's defensive game, because if you're a coach and you have a choice between Mattias Hävelid and Zane Parekh in their primes in terms of who you're going to play on the right side on your top pair, I would not be surprised if you lean Mattias Hävelid. As good as Zane Parekh is offensively, I think that Hävelid has that offensive side, maybe not as much as Parekh, but he has a defensive baseline. It's going to help him get to the next level and stick to it, earn a coach's trust, and kind of work from there. Overall, I don't think there's much worries about Hävelid making the NHL. I have a bit more questions about his upside and ceiling and how far he can go up. But overall, there's just so much to love with Hävelid's game, especially with the puck. He's magical with the puck. He's really, really fun to watch and rarely makes a bad decision. That's the main thing that stands out when you watch him.
And that's what coaches like, right? You don't want the Ryan Merkley making the bad pullings. You can do a bunch of amazing things, but then you make that one bad decision. You never see the bench, or you never see the ice again. So another defenseman, Jake Furlong for Team Canada, who I think, again, like kind of was one of those bubble guys, made the team. And I thought he had himself a really nice tournament for Team Canada, even though they lost a little bit early. But Jake Furlong, I think he's going to be in San Jose next year. I think he's going to be on the AHL team next year. Thoughts on his game?
Yeah, I thought he had an excellent tournament. He's one of the bigger surprises that I personally have. Like I've been avoiding QMJHL hockey whenever I've been able to, so I haven't been keeping up too much since the draft. But I thought he was excellent at this tournament. He was, I think, quite easily Canada's best shutdown defender that they had in their lineup. And they had some pretty good defensemen ahead of him. Like, I'm a big fan of guys like Noah Warren. And while Maverick Lamoureux has his fair share of question marks, I think he's a pretty solid defensive defenseman, especially against his own age group. So the fact that Furlong stood out as like head and heels above the next best defensive defenseman in that lineup for the small sample is really impressive. He was matching footwork incredibly well off the rush. He was keeping like the tightest gap of any Canadian defenseman by a long shot. Really aggressive in defending the rush, which is what you love to see in players like him. And he was able to make a difference with every shift in the defensive zone, and he was making plays like and opening up space for his more skilled line mates. He was very comfortably deferring to more skilled players to make more high skilled plays rather than forcing himself into mistakes. And I think that reliability is something that coaches respect a lot in players. And yeah, I mean, San Jose will have no lack of dynamic wingers and centers to take the puck up the ice in transition. You don't really need Jake Furlong to do that work for you. So the fact that he is such a capable distributor from the back end, making the short passes at best from the defensive zone, the breakout, and just a really steady and consistent buildup and transition is nice. And in the offensive zone, he's got a pretty hard slap shot. I mean, he scored a goal in the tournament, which I don't think he's done in the QJL so far this season. Very big goal.
I think he's got one. He's got one in the queue.
He's got one.
So
Yeah. Limited goal scoring upside, but I think with Furlong, that's not really what you're asking for.
Yeah, and dependable is the word with Furlong. That's really just what stood out every time I watched him. And that's kind of what Canada needed, but they had a bit too much dependability on that blue line. That's what kind of cost them. The way they built their roster is they decided on a structure, on a system, and chose players that matched that rather than what USA and Sweden did, which was let's ice our best players and figure out the structure that we're gonna ice and use based on that. But Furlong really, I mean, to his credit, just so dependable every time. It was really rare to see him make a mistake. There's just not as much dare in his game as other defensemen in that roster, and that kind of held him back. But overall, just really, really steady defenseman.
Yeah, like I said, I think Furlong is going to be playing in the AHL next year, and I think he's just kind of that guy that Mike Greer, that type of defenseman that Mike Greer wants, and getting a just nice, solid defenseman in the 5th round, like that's not the worst thing in the world there. So before we talk about the big guns in Macklin Celebrini, and we'll talk about Cutter Gauthier and why these Sharks have to get Macklin Celebrini, just take a quick break here. If you're looking for a late holiday gift, you want to buy someone some tickets to the next big event, whether maybe you want to go catch the Warriors, maybe you want to go catch the Niners at a playoff game, or maybe you want to send your mortal enemy Sharks tickets. GameTime has got you covered because they take the guesswork out of buying tickets. The thing I love about GameTime is you can actually see what your seats are going to look like. Nothing worse than getting there and realizing you have bad seats. Actually, the only thing worse is when you go to check out and the app slams a bunch of fees on top of it. You don't have to worry about that with GameTime. They have all-in pricing, so you know exactly what you're going to pay when you go to check out. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. The apple to our eye, Macklin Celebrini. He was Canada's best player, right? It's not that much of a hot take that the 17-year-old kid was the Canada's best player. And let's start with the of course draft stuff's going to kick off here at Locked On Sharks, and you guys will be on here a ton, of course, talking about draft prospects. But we'll talk about Celebrini in this tournament. What were your kind of expectations going in, and did he outperform them or kind of exceed expectations or disappoint you? So we'll go Hadi. What your thought of Celebrini going in and coming out?
He's a monster. I mean, just he's so difficult to handle. I put myself in the shoes of defensemen having to come up against a player who consistently and constantly attacks downhill with speed, cuts across you, makes you back up, shoots through you, finds a lane. He's just wave after wave after wave of offensive pressure off the rush, and it's so tough to handle. But I was also really impressed with his end zone play. I mean, overall, like you said, he was Canada's best player, and it's hard to underwhelm in those in those shoes. But yeah, I mean, you talk about a player who just solidified himself as the top player from this draft and a player that you're not going to get if you don't get the first overall pick. That's him. But yeah, on our episode, on our Wednesday episode that's going to be coming out, we talked a lot more about the 79.5% chance that the San Jose Sharks don't end up with the lottery win and end up picking 2nd to 4th overall, and the options we have there. But if you do get 1st overall, you should be cry laughing if you're a Sharks fan. Like it's really like he is the best prospect from this draft, and it's not even close.
Oh yeah, he's making our lives really easy at Dauber. Like it's another year with no debate at number 1. It's like, okay, that's one headache that we can avoid at the very least.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've seen at BU, like he's been as advertised, and like his ability. I think that the thing that surprised me is because he's only 5'11", but he plays like a guy who's just way bigger and way faster than someone who's 5'11", and he's like, again, he's the youngest guy in NCAA. I think he was the youngest guy in this tournament. I assume, if not one of the youngest guys in this tournament, but like
one of them.
The dude just plays bigger and stronger and faster than someone of his age and size. And you think we're projecting that he'll continue that trend and just continue to be a monster when he comes to the NHL, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like Macklin Celebrini has a tremendous toolkit, and he's so versatile. As you said, he's really powerful, but to that power, he adds a ton of agility, a ton of dynamism. He's so creative with the puck on his stick. He's constantly trying to pull defenders in one direction before cutting explosively back in the other. He's super pacey. We haven't seen a more dynamic puck rusher than Macklin Celebrini in the last couple of drafts, including Connor Bedard in terms of raw pace as a puck rusher up the ice. Celebrini is really special in that facet, and you add to that a deadly one-timer on the power play, high-end playmaking ability. You ask him to do anything in the offensive zone, and he'll be able to do it pretty well. So he's so versatile, and whichever team lands him basically just has a shoe-in as at their 1C spot in their lineup for the next 15 years, and don't really have to worry about it too much. So he's a really special player. I think as this year's progressed, at least internally at Dauber, we've been having some discussions of how we would compare to Adam Fantilli from last year, and I think, at least as of right now, we're pretty unanimous in being more impressed with Celebrini this year than we were with Fantilli last year. And we were really, really, really impressed with Fantilli last year. But Celebrini is playing more controlled and dynamic hockey than Fantilli was last season in NCAA. And he's like 9 months younger at the same age, like it's the same age group. So he is disgustingly good. If Sharks fans land him, I would expect celebrations out in the streets of San Jose. But yeah, it'd be a fun time to be a Sharks fan for sure.
We deserve this. Come on. And the storylines make so much sense. Former junior Shark, his dad works for the Warriors. He's going to Boston University, where David Quinn and Mike Greer both attended school. Like, it just makes so much sense. So, but one of the big reasons, like, the Sharks have to do everything in their power to try to land Macklin Celebrini is because of what's going on down south, right? The Anaheim Ducks, huge trade today acquiring Cutter Gauthier, and what the Ducks are building, especially down the middle, right? You have Gauthier, you have Leo Carlson, you have Mason McTavish, you have Zegras. Like, this team has gotten an embarrassment of riches in the forwards, and that's you're going to have to compete with here over the next couple of years. And this is like they're going to be at some point. You assume Vegas is going to one day hopefully fall off. I think the Kings have kind of starting to hit their window right now, but the Ducks are going to be coming, and that's you're going to figure out to compete with. So potentially icing Celebrini Smith down the middle at least would be a nice way to start. So let's start with really quickly with the Ducks. Home run swing for them, right?
It's a swing and a half. I think I personally, I mean, I've been processing this trade for only 30 minutes right now because you broke it to me. But really, really fascinating. I think I'm already a bit more optimistic in terms of Gauthier's long-term projection now than I was 32 minutes ago, because in Philadelphia, he was kind of like the shoe-in as like the future 1C in terms of like future roster projections. With Anaheim, he's a comfortable like 2 left wing projection, and that is exactly where I think he should be developing. I think you're going to get a lot more value out of Cutter Gauthier by kind of having him in that type of a role. Like, you're not going to see Gauthier like ahead of Carlson or McTavish down the center depth. I don't think. Like, I don't think he has the same level of upside. He's not nearly as creative as those two. He's not as adaptable. He has more limitations. He's more trigger happy. He still is learning a lot of habits that the other two have down at a younger age. But that being said, he has a really impressive toolkit. He has a wicked shot. When he looks for his playmaking options, he's a hell of a passer. And I know both me and Hadi were kind of like pulling at our hair during the World Junior Championships. At the very least, before the elimination game started, the first like 3-4 games of the tournament, Cutter Gauthier was just like a shooting glitch. Like, it was like he was stuck on the shot and he wasn't passing at all.
What is it,
and he was
Kasper
still
Halttunen
logging like
it was Halton on steroids. Basically.
But he was still
like
getting assists. Like he was finding a way to produce anyways. And then once the elimination games hit, he actually started playing some really damn good hockey. And I'm personally lower on him than others. Like, I think if you give me the choice between Cutter Gauthier and Ryan Leonard, I'm taking Ryan Leonard, which is not something that everyone would say. But that is still a really good player that Anaheim added. And I mean, Jamie Drysdale is a swing and a half to get for Philly. But I think you're getting a lot more certain value with Cutter Gauthier. So definitely a dangerous player entering the division now.
For sure. And, it's the offensive versatility for me that really makes him work. Because if you place him with Mason McTavish, who's a bona fide sniper, Gauthier can mold himself into a playmaker role. But if you place him with Zegras, if you place him with Carlson, he will take the goal scoring role very, very seriously and do it very, very well. So it's just, having a player that versatile on the wing of either one of those would be fantastic. And the four centers you mentioned, Gauthier, Carlson, Zegras, and I'm blanking on the other name. Goodness. McTavish. Yeah. All four of them have played wing and have done it really, really well. So it's just having that mixability is really, really good for a roster. And this is
somebody
a great
gets
fit.
hurt, just slide somebody over.
Oh my God.
It's easier to it's easier to find a winger than it is to find a center. And it's
such a luxury.
They keep doing this. It's hopefully eventually we'll get back to the really fun Southern California or like California hockey again. Right, the Kings are holding up their end right now, but the Sharks and the Ducks hopefully one day soon. So boys, thank you guys so much. Where can the people find you guys? Hadi, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at HadiK_scouting. It's the one-stop shop. You can find everything I post there. You can find us at Locked On NHL Prospects, wherever you get this podcast. Just look up Locked On NHL Prospects. You'll find us. We post 5 days a week, and we post about prospects. If you like prospects, and if you're a Sharks fan who's desperate,
you should like prospects as a Sharks fan. Yes.
Yeah. It's definitely the time for Sharks fans to tune into our channel. Like, we're talking about them a lot. And for my work, just like Hadi, Twitter's a one-stop shop. So it's hi_Sebastian on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X just yet. Haven't gotten used to it. But Locked On NHL Prospects on YouTube and every Spotify or audio streaming platform is where you can get the most content from us, because again, we're posting 2.5 hours of content every single week. So you get to listen to our voices a lot more than here, for sure.
And of course, you guys will be making regular appearances as we start to dive into the draft process here at Locked On Sharks. Of course, you can find Locked On Sharks wherever you get podcasts and watch on YouTube. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Until next time, bye, friends.